Welcome everyone to the first IDW Sonic comic review of 2024, and today we're taking a look at issue 68. Before we begin, if you're new to the channel and enjoy this kind of content, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. From here on out, there will be spoilers. Issue 68, from what I was able to find, was originally scheduled to be released on December 27, 2023. But considering it's within the week between Christmas and New Year's, it's kind of understandable why it got delayed. And as we go through this issue, there will be this feeling that it was meant to come out at the end of 2023. For one thing, it's a one-and-done story that doesn't connect to the series' current ongoing arc, and two, there will be something going on with the series that I'll discuss later on. For now, let's dive right into the issue. Sonic and Tails are out and about for two reasons. One, Tails picked up a Chaos Emerald on his radar, and they're tracking it down. And two, Tails wanted to test his new Yellowtail Turbo X gear to see if it will go very fast. Fast enough to actually beat Sonic. So the two race towards the Emerald. It actually looks like Tails and his board might win this one. That is until Sonic boosts by him. Sonic takes the opportunity to turn around and taunt Tails in a friendly manner. If it was someone like Jet, he'd probably give him the finger or something. This ends badly for Sonic because as he's running backwards, he fails to notice a hole along the ground. Tails tries saving him, but the X gear gives out and both of them fall into the collapsing hole. Naturally, they're fine. No broken ankles or anything this time. They get their bearings. Turns out the place they landed in is an abandoned mine. All they have to do is find another hole that leads them out of there. Tails is eager to repair the X gear and analyze the data, while Sonic wants to get some food. That'll have to wait a bit as the Chaos Emerald signal is stronger than before, meaning it may be in the mines. The two head onward, eventually passing by some hastily dropped mining gear. It seems the miners might have been scared off by something down here. Sonic and Tails see light up ahead and believe they found an exit. Only it's not daylight. They wind up in a cave full of plants and bioluminescent creatures. And the water is what's making this place bright. At least that's what it looks like. It could be something in the water for all we know. According to Tails' readings, the Emerald's definitely in the area. So the two split up to cover more ground. After some looking around, Sonic finds the Emerald and wonders if someone or something placed it in here. He's about to get his answer as a giant glowing salamander emerges from the shadows. I think we now know what scared off the miners. Sonic's having a little trouble and asks Tails for an airlift. Unfortunately, he's unable to reach him. Tails notices how the salamander is moving carefully during the confrontation with Sonic. He quickly hotwires the X gear to get it working again and sends it to Sonic before the salamander can get a good chomp in. We soon learn why it was acting this way. It was just protecting its home. Sonic walking around really upset it, and him zipping around while avoiding the salamander made things worse. Tails was flying around during all this, so he was lucky. And now, thanks to the X gear, Sonic's off the ground, and the salamanders return to a more docile state. Sonic decides to reason with the creature, as well as apologize to it. He tells it that they're only here for the Chaos Emerald, and wouldn't mind letting it have it. However, he points out that others may track it here, so if it really wants to keep its home safe, it'd be best if they take the Emerald. Even though the salamander doesn't make a reaction, it agrees. Especially since it reveals a way out for the two after being asked. Sonic and Tails emerge from a cliffside, and Sonic right away reseals their exit hole. Much to Tails' disappointment. He really wanted to study the cave's ecosystem, but Sonic reminds him that the salamander wanted to keep its home safe. He's just helping out in his own way. He does cheer up his little buddy by comparing the salamander to a certain echidna who also aggressively defends his home. Speaking of, the story ends with the two heading home to study the X gear data, and in Sonic's case, getting something to eat. The story reminds me of one of Evan Stanley's earlier tales, Chow Races and Badnik Bases. specifically the part where Sonic and Tails explore the underground Eggman base. In fact, for funsies, let's compare the two situations. In both scenarios, Sonic and Tails are in an underground area searching for something. Eggman's translation cipher and Badnik bases, and a Chaos Emerald in this story. Both places have an ominous feel, there's something lurking in the shadows, there's conflict, and by the end, both areas are rendered inaccessible. Here's what makes them different. The Badnik base had a mechanical, menacing feel, highlighted by the occasional reddish coloring. The threat had the intention of harm, there was a lot of destruction, and while Sonic and Tails failed in their objective, they wound up with something better in the long run. In contrast, the organic cave and connecting mines, despite looking spooky, has this beauty to it, helped by the warm blue coloring. The threat was just defending that beauty, and once things were sorted out, Sonic and Tails left peacefully with their objective fulfilled. There's no harm in reusing ideas, as long as it's done in a different way from the previous time, and I think Evan did okay here. I wonder if Evan had child races and Badnik bases in mind while writing this story. Someone should find out. One more thing the two stories have in common is the display of brotherhood between Sonic and Tails. Evan always does a good job on that front. A few examples in this issue include that race in the beginning, Sonic and Tails trying to save each other from falling into the hole, and finally there's the ending where Sonic had to seal the cave off to protect the salamander's environment. In that case, Tails was disappointed that he couldn't study the ecosystem for science, even after what happened, but Sonic in his good nature reminded him that sometimes it's best to leave things well enough alone, though he did cheer him up with that Knuckles comparison. Sonic's not heartless, he's just being pragmatic about the situation. Just like how he convinced the salamander to let them take the emerald to make sure no one else disturbs its home. And it's a good thing that it was Sonic and Tails that found the emerald first. Imagine if someone like Eggman discovered the place. The salamander would put up a valiant fight, but chances are it would lose. And even if it did win, its home would have been wrecked. The cave itself is visually stunning, with its flora and bioluminescent fauna. There are caves in real life that glow in the dark thanks to its mineral properties. A prime example being Cave of the Mounds. Plants do grow along the cave walls, and bioluminescent life does exist in caves, like the New Zealand glowworms. I don't think a giant glowing salamander exists in the real world, as far as we know. It's a reminder that in both the real world and Sonic's world, there are places that are undisturbed, and should remain undisturbed. Even with all the things Sonic and Tails have witnessed throughout their adventures, I can still see why Tails would want to study this cave for a bit. But he's got better things to do, such as analyzing the data from his X-Gear test. The Yellowtail, for those unaware, came from the Sonic Riders series, where it has taken many forms, due to Tails constantly rebuilding it from the ground up. It has even appeared in an earlier issue of this series. Here, we have a new version called the Yellowtail Turbo, which I guess is supposed to be faster than the previous model. I assume one of the reasons Tails made this is because he wants to make similar speedy boards in the event the Babylon Rogues challenge our heroes to another rider-style race. Gotta keep up with waves somehow. And hey, the Yellowtail Turbo de-escalated the situation between Sonic and the Salamander. Finally, I want to point out that this is the third Chaos Emerald to appear in the series ever since the end of the Melvirus saga. The first one being in Spiral Hill's Gem Museum before Rouge stole it, and the second one being the prize in Winter Jam. Thanks to the likes of the games, we know they scatter after Sonic uses them, or after taking damage by things that can cancel out his super form, and they wind up in random locations. This more than likely happened while Sonic was caught in the explosion in issue 29, and while he wound it up in Blaze's world, the emeralds luckily stayed in Sonic's, scattered and waiting to be collected once again. The salamander, even though it's intelligent enough to understand Sonic, probably didn't realize what the emerald actually was, and thought it was a nice glowy rock it could add to its home. On her Twitter account, Evan Stanley considers this issue the true ending to the Misadventures arc. In a way, yes, it was a misadventure, but as I said in the beginning, it's its own one-and-done adventure not linked in any way to the current story arc. As far as we know at least. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing can vary, but I see it as a breather after all the insanity of the past several issues. Besides the issue with falling into the hole and the conflict with the salamander, there was this nice, easy feel to it. Kinda like you're winding down after a long, hard year. Even the final page has this nice calming feel to it. You can also tell by the final page that this issue was originally supposed to come out in 2023. And I'm not talking about this message right here. We'll get to it. It's just the image of Sonic and Tails heading off home to relax. It gives off a sense of closure in a way, as if the two are taking a nice long break. It's a good thing the story is a one and done because the comic itself will be going on a bit of a hiatus until May, and it would suck if it were to happen in the middle of a story arc. In its place for the next 4 months will be an IDW Sonic miniseries starring Fang the Hunter. Of course, I'll talk more about it when it comes out. What is odd is that they're delaying the main book for the sake of an entire miniseries. Issues have been delayed before due to miniseries, but it's only for a month or so. And usually overall they'd still be running alongside the main book. Of course, there will be rumors as to the reason for the hiatus. Rumors that I will not spread here. What I will say is that when the main series returns later this year, the creators promise that things are going to happen on the road to issue 75. And with that, I'll see you over at the Fang miniseries, or any of my other videos, and have a good day. This giant salamander would feel right at home on North Star Island. You'll know why if you're familiar with Sonic Superstars.